Good afternoon and welcome to Good Journeys Tarot. I am Rosemary and we are here today to talk about this wonderful little card, the Ace of Wands, in my 78 Cards in 78 Weeks project, where I'm studying through each card and doing a write-up about them, as well as mocking up what I might like my own cards to look like when I print them. Welcome in. So glad you're here. And so before we get into the card, as I often do, I'll share what's come into my life this week besides this little bit of cold thing. Um, it, for some reason, this happens every year when the temperature changes. And this year, the temperature didn't change gradually over the several weeks, but it changed overnight. So here where I'm at outside Atlanta, it went from being in the 70s to being in the 20s. Over the course of 24 hours, and has stayed cold ever since. And so had this little bit of ick going on. I wanted to sleep till noon every day. Hi, Gerald. Hi, Amy. Welcome. So glad that you could be with us to talk about the Ace of Wands. I hope that the countdown helped with people getting notification that we were going live. I think I'm going to record my own countdown to put in there in the future. But I didn't know how to do this until last week. So yay me, learning in 2022. So this week I did get a couple of things that you might be interested in. One is a fan, because every time I'm on Gerald's channel and I see him with this fan, I'm like, oh, I love that. I've been wanting to replace my black fan for a while. I might decorate it, but I don't know. I might have trouble opening it if I paint it, but we will see. Anyway, don't you love how it opens like that? I know Gerald does. It's amazing. When I come into this room in the winter like this, it's cold, even though there's a heater vent in here. And so I will, and I think to myself, I'm going to freeze doing this live. And then 30 seconds into the live, I'm like, okay, it's time to turn on my fan because I'm hot already. I guess that's what anxiety does to you. So there we go. Fan is on. Going to cool off a little bit. The other thing that I received was a spur of the moment wine-induced purchase when I was on the chit chat with Gerald at Tarot Stash a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about some Oracle decks, and they also were talking about life as like a board game. I like the design. It's a cool idea and everything. But basically, to me, it reminds me of those simple cards, where you just get like, okay, this is a yellow card. It has a 1 on it. That's the Ace of Air, or the Ace of Swords. But in this case, instead, it has, the keywords as the street names. And so I thought it was really cool. I am struggling a little bit with the pages and the knights in this deck, because the knights are listed as messengers and the pages as development. And I tend to think of those the other way around when I am working with a deck. And so the other card that's giving you a problem is this one, the one that says Quick Communication Gardens for the 8 of Wands. I don't associate wands with communications. I've never considered this card as related to communication. So that kind of bugged me a little bit. But all of them they're so cool. I mean, being someone who board games and whatnot, it's a fun concept. And I like the way most of them are done. The back's really simple. With just the little questions on the back. And so I actually have done some readings with this over the last couple of days, and I do enjoy it. It's nice for something simple once in a while versus the very intricate images we get in some decks, right? And then we start thinking about all of those images rather than the ideas and concepts. So sometimes just the idea is all that you need. This is a deck that's probably going to live in the tuck box, because life is like a board game, and it is a card deck, so it should go in a tuck box, in my opinion. Now, I will say I had to edit my box because the tabs kept preventing me from opening it. And it was driving me nuts. I mean, I was like tearing the box to get it open every time. And so all I did was I just cut them at an angle, and now it opens and closes really great. And so perhaps I will be joining Gerald and to talk about that in the future. So let's talk about our Ace of Wands. So the Ace of Wands, of course, being the first card, so to speak, in the suit, is associated with Keter on the Tree of Life. That first concept that kind of comes in from the nothingness, containing everything and nothing related to this element, right? And so it's often about new beginnings. In a lot of my reading, births came up a lot, which I probably would never have associated this with birth until I read that. The other thing is that this card, for several people that I read, particularly Teresa Reed, is the yes card. So if you ever in doubt of something and you see this card, that's like the green light, even though it's our fire suit that's associated with red, right? So red means go in the tarot. Yeah, so let's look at some cards from various decks, and I'm going to start with a older deck, and we see this in the Marseille where it's a club versus a wand, and there was a very interesting topic in a book that I read this week that I'm going to share with you real quick about this card versus the Ace of Swords, which we just did 2 weeks ago. Hello, Jonathan. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And that's in Jodorowsky's book, Tarot, the Spiritual Teacher and the Cards. And at the very bottom of the page here, you'll see where he's comparing the sword and the wand. And the comparison that he is making is that with the swords, the element is at its base, the thickest, and then it goes up to a point. So we're clarifying our ideas. However, in the wands, the wand is narrower at the bottom and then grows at the top because that is energy that we are releasing or we're putting out into the world. It's active. And so that was an interesting idea that I kind of picked up on that I thought was interesting. We don't tend to get that concept as much in some of the cards because they just use a wand, which is usually symmetrical. Sorry, my dog is coughing. You okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. I love this depiction where the wand is called flame at the top, the releasing of that energy. This is the Fyodor Pavlov. Just a gorgeous depiction. Here's the Urban Tarot, of course, relating it to the city there with the Statue of Liberty's torch. You'll also see the imagery from the Thoth there because this is a Thoth-based deck. In some decks, we get the creative ideas. Like in this case, there's a pencil that is the wand. This is from the Hearts and Hands Tarot, which was just released mass market by US Games. Unfortunately, it's still huge like this and has these humongous borders on the back. So it's a little awkward to work with, but beautiful images in black and white. Jamie Sawyer picked this up in The Pocket of Peers, where she actually used the paintbrush as the wand, very fitting for her and her work. And I really loved this idea from the Curious Travels, where your hand is the wand. The hand is the one manifesting. You can kind of see how the hand merges with the wand, becomes one with it, and expands. It's just gorgeous. Very much a creative card, and that I've always seen it as creativity. But another thing that comes into it that I've really been exploring more recently is passion. And we'll actually see some of that in a little bit. But here in the Spacious Tarot, there was a wand with that spark at the tip. And I suppose this might be a little bit of where I got some of my ideas for my card. I initially wasn't very thrilled with the wands in this deck, but I'm growing to the point that I can appreciate them, right? So last week, when we were talking about the Queen of Wands, one of the wands I showed you was Marie Laveau from the Bonestone Earthflesh Tarot, and she had that flaming Ouroboros around her neck. That is actually the ace in that deck. Is that burning Ouroboros, that kind of symbol of magic of fire, of that, continuous cycle. That we experience in magic. And sometimes that's what we get associated with this card because it is a wand, right? And then finally, I have the Light Seers here. And the Light Seers gives that notion of that spark of creation that's coming to our minds, that has originated, as it were. And that's one of the concepts that I saw in a lot of my reading, is that this is the card of origins. And I think that stems from the fact that that section of the Tree of Life is associated with fire, and that section being the very point where we begin to see something out of nothingness, so to speak. Though not literally, it's still a concept or a construct or idea. And so we get that idea of this being the origin card. Yes, absolutely. Depending on the context of the reading, a card can mean almost anything. I think I've shared several times now, and I won't go into it today, how the meaning of chariot has changed for me over the last few weeks. So this card is called in the Golden Dawn the root of the powers of fire. So basically, this is the essence of fire, that which burns within our passion, from which we are creative, we're innovative. We have new enterprises arise. And this is usually the start of an enterprise, not necessarily the financial success of the enterprise, but that birthing of it, which is another concept that comes up over and over again regarding this ace, is that it is a card about birth. So if you're doing a reading about family and about starting a family and you get this card, it's the yes card. In fact, this again is the yes card. It says, whatever you're reading about, that energy is positive when you see this card. At least that's how Teresa Reed sees it. And I kind of like that assessment of it. And when you're reading with cartomancy, with a deck of playing cards, the red colors would be your yeses. Though this would actually not be associated with red in that deck. So just a little confusing note there. Right. Yeah. It's the spark that sets up everything. So this is also about vitality. It can be about confidence. So it's a lot of the things which our queen last week exemplified, hence it being there present in her picture in this particular deck. And also that sexual energy or passion that we talked about with the queen present here, because the ace, again, is everything to do with the whole suit. And so anything that you might associate with those other cards will be associated with this in a way. Tarot stash. All right. It also could be the trigger. So just like a spark can be like the beginning of something, the start of something, it could be the trigger. I immediately thought to myself, why didn't I just use a start button, for the card, like the beginning, the ignition, put that little dot there for you to press on that card. Um, Now, in reverse, this card can sometimes, and there's the coloring I did. Not a lot to color in it, but um, when it is reversed or we're looking at the shadow side of it, it could mean that we have a false start, like we thought we were starting something, but we didn't. It could be that things are fizzling out or petering out, as some people might say. Um, it could just mean that you've got a setback or you have lack of energy, lack of motivation, procrastination. And, I'm surprised I don't get this card in reverse more often for that reason. So, since I have this out and we were looking at it, let's talk a little bit about the symbols in here. Typically in the Smith way, there are lots of symbols for things, but usually in the aces, I think of only this one main symbol, right? That wand, and don't think really about these other things that are going on in it, but they can add something to it. And so, for example, in here, the trees are about growth, which this is about creation, the beginnings. So things are about to grow when we see this. And so those trees are a vital piece of this. The river representing change or things in motion. When you see this, something is starting, it is happening. And while we tend to relate beginnings to all of these aces, this ace, because it's the first ace, particularly when you relate it to Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, is the ultimate beginning, right? The other important thing in here is this castle. It is on a hilltop, showing that it is secure, that it is um, perhaps a lofty goal. It's a little bit above us at the moment. It also can represent dominion. And so as we move into the 2 and 3, we begin to get that idea of dominion and planning for it and expanding it. And so that's also represented here in this ace. And so that's why when I started creating my card, I decided that I wanted to include some of those symbols. What I started out with was actually this card. I was playing because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. As I thought about creating this card, I kept coming up with the image I created for the queen of doing the painting. And I was like, well, I don't want this card to be the same as that card. And so I thought, well, I keep calling it the spark of creation. And so I put a spark out there and had a little hand holding it. And then I was like, you know what? But the thing about the aces is that these are things that are being given to us, are presented to us. They are from outside of us. Someone is handing them to us. We don't know who that is or what that is, if it's our own higher genius or guardian angel, or if it's, a divine source outside of us, but it's being presented to us. It's given. We are receiving, so to speak, these aces and all that they entail. And so I began playing with it a little more. And initially, when I posted the video of this, I did not have the house in there. And I went back and added the house later because I realized that castle was important. We needed to look at that idea of goals, of dominion in this card. And so we have the river, the trees, the house, which were all important elements in the previous card. And then I went with the sparkler. And as I saw this image come together, again, like I have with some of my cards, I realized this is actually a moment in my life, right? A place in my life. So when I was growing up, we lived on a river and by a very wooded area. And I remember that some of the times where we were most joyful and happy were when we were doing things like playing with fireworks, the sparklers that we would play with during the summer or at New Year's, and just running around with excitement. We're so full of energy, which is, what that ace is all about: pure energy, excitement. Something is happening. And so it kind of resonated with me then. I have been playing a little bit with the hand that's holding it. In my mind, this is the adult in handing the sparkler off to the child. So this is the building of the excitement. This is the idea of that I mentioned earlier of we're being given something, we are receiving something through the aces in our lives. And at its beginning. So it's not burnt out. It's just starting. Let's see. I've played around with it a little bit. I made the hand thinner, and I also lowered it a little bit because I wanted the focus to be more on the sparkler or the wand, so to speak, and less on the hand. What are your thoughts about this image? And what are your thoughts about calling the cards stabs? Because I wanted something that would resonate with all of the imagery I've been using. So, like in some of the wands, which, by the way, we now have done 20 cards, and over a third of those were wands. So this has been a very fire-heavy process so far, all about creativity. And I've used signposts as wands. I've used tree limbs as wands. And now I've used the sparkler as a wand. I used a paintbrush as a wand. But I wanted a word for the suit that would kind of incorporate all of those things. And nearest I can come up is stabs, which I really don't like that word. I don't know what it is about that word. It doesn't sound right coming off of my mouth. So when I write about it in my guidebook, I'm actually still calling it the Ace of Wands, though I'm reluctant to use those words on the card because I'm not actually using wands. I'm using various sticks. And I don't think the Ace of Sticks has quite the same gravitas as wands or staffs. The other thing I realized is that I have been quite lazy over the last few weeks. I went back to do the guidebook post for this and realized I did not actually type up my guidebook entry for either of the previous two cards, the Ace of Swords or the Queen of Wands. And so, and that is another idea that some decks take. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Of denoting the I guess the feel of the suit. So like we get that with the Muse Tarot and with some other decks where the wands might be inspiration, the swords might be knowledge or intellect or something like that. I guess rods would be a good one. Rods is one that's used in a lot of decks, typically older decks. So that might work. But that's still something I'm playing with. So we'll get there hopefully. But I do like that now that I'm thinking about it. Rods. It's not one that I see a lot in my particular decks. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. So, like I said, I'm still changing these cards each week as I work on new cards, and so I don't know exactly what the final will look like. Strength Reverse said, I like wands. Staffs make me think of struggle because it's something you lean on, or like a cane, right? And I actually had anticipated using a cane or a walking stick in one or more of the wands at some point. Yeah, and that's the other option, is to call them by their elements: the suit of fire, the suit of air, the suit of earth, which I had considered. And so that's still something I haven't settled on, but I love your ideas. I'm so glad there are so many of you here today and you're sharing ideas. That's what I was really hoping for with this live series. So let's take a look at what card we might be looking at next week. Before we do, I'm going to share. Oh, share. Nope, Chrome tab. There we go. Here we go. Where we're at, I said we've done 20 cards, and here are the 20 cards so far as they look on Make Playing cards with their black borders. And you'll notice as we progress, I feel like the artwork has improved to the point where I feel like I have to go back and I have to revisit, at the very least, these 3 cards to a degree, so that they will work better with the rest of these. I will tell you that on social media, the card that has gotten the most attention was the Shadow, which totally owe credit to Tarot Stash for the idea that really made it. Thank you so much, Gerald. People really do love that card. One of the things about the aces, since we've got both of them up, that I talked about last week was that I had heard mention before of the positioning of the hands, and but I haven't found anything else about that. There was a brief little note in one book about how with the Ace of Swords that you didn't see the palm, you saw the back of the hand. So perhaps something hidden, knowledge that you were going to gain. Whereas with the wands, you see the open palm and you're revealing things. So that's something that I'm thinking about. Maybe I'll go back and I'll update those silhouettes. Right now, most of my silhouettes seem to be in the same vein, the same, whoops, where am I? Oh, the same kind of shapes and sizes, but they will be changing over time. There are some different sizes and shapes of people that will be popping up in future cards. I actually had specific people in mind for my cards. And since I don't really have the means to actually put them in the cards doing it this way at the moment, I decided to go with the silhouettes so that it could be anyone at any point. And some of these were specifically me at points in my life, like this card and this card, although they should probably be a little heavier to be me at those points. And this being my family, except that my mother is much shorter. So, things like that, that I know that I wanted the cards, but I haven't gotten to the point where I know how to do that. These are my neighbors. Very specific people. This is my mother. Definitely not what she looks like. This is actually me, and I haven't ever told all of that story to you guys, but I was a minister for 13 years. And so that's why I'm the chaplain or hierophant there. I also kind of saw this as me back in high school. I like that this coat looks oversized, like things do on teenagers sometimes, especially scrawny ones like I was. But then there's other cards that are other people, but I wanted to see myself in my deck, and see people that I knew and relate it to episodes that I could remember in my life, right? While still bringing in the esoteric information from the Golden Dawn, as well as things I've learned from other systems as well. Right, branches also another idea. So here is our deck that we've been pulling from. Let me just remove that. Let's see what our next card is. I'd say drum roll, but I don't have a way to make a drum roll yet. We'll get there. Oh, there we go. Okay. Usually if I'm working with a deck on a continuous project, I'll only shuffle it about 3 times when I'm doing a new reading. So hence short shuffling. And our card for this week is, okay, the Page of Pentacles. So this will be our first page. And interestingly enough, this card has come up a few times this past week as I've been working with the Spirit Keepers Tarot, which is the Herald. And in that deck, usually people will pull a second card when they see the pages. And that's something I actually do occasionally with other readings because historically pages are messengers, right? And so, yeah. So we'll be working on the Page of Pentacles. It should be interesting. I'm not sure what I'm calling my pages yet, and I don't know, have really an idea for this card. In fact, I don't think, let me look. For some of the cards, I actually have extensive notes already because I've studied them previously, because I've been trying to get up the courage to just do this deck for 10 years. And so yeah, so the Page of Pentacles is one I'm starting from scratch. I've never taken a single note or had a single thought about. And so it should be a fun and interesting week. Hold on, I want to see what I've missed. Let's see. Magic wand pointed boob. That's funny. Okay, I'm struggling to see our little oh, I see the drum roll. Thank you, Ange, and Amy from Strength Reverse. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And I will probably be posting finally my response to the 7 Deadly Sins decks this week. Last week, of course, I did the walkthrough of the SKT, which has been well received. And yesterday, Benabel Wynn was on. And if you haven't seen that video yet, do go over and watch it. I will say I was more nervous than I have been in years doing that particular live. And when it was done, it was still anxiety ridden. And had to go back and rewatch it to make sure I hadn't made a complete idiot of myself. Anybody have that experience where you just have to like go back and watch your own video or live to make sure that you didn't do anything crazy? I had to do that with the chit chat with Terry Stash, and I was okay with how it came out. I wasn't too embarrassed by what I did. Yeah, I am too. I've got to play around with it and figure out what decks I'm going to be using for that end. I know a lot of you have already done that. So, guys, I hope you have a great week. Until I see you next, good journeys.